Good morning, everybody. We are going to give just a few minutes to get started. Hope that you all had a wonderful 4th of July. However, you took time this weekend to invest in yourself, to reflect, to build a reaction to whatever it is that you'd like for that week to look like coming up. So go ahead and take a moment, say hello to us while I get this shared on a few other platforms. Wanted to just make sure that we are having conversations around the topics that you want to talk about. Today is going to be an interesting topic. And as we've mentioned before, please feel free to text whatever questions you might have. You can send those over. You can send us a private message. You can also email us at team@michaelreedy.org. Any of those are going to be valuable to us. We want to hear from you. You can also put it in the comment section right here. What is it that you would like us to have conversations about in the future? If you'd like for me to bring guests onto the show, any of those things that could be helpful for us, make this better for everyone. We definitely want to be as helpful as possible. So while we're doing that, go ahead and say hello, good morning, and we are going to get started in just a few minutes. So today's conversation, good morning everybody. Today's conversation is a topic that I think is very fitting. First of all, I want to say thank you as well to those of you who joined us last Thursday for the mid-year alignment. For those of you that attended, you should be getting an email out today that's going to be able to send you that recording. We are also going to make a recording available to those people who did not have an opportunity to join us on Thursday. It's quite all right. We know that things happen, you get busy, and we want to make sure that that information is there. Just because it is the 5th of July doesn't mean that it is too late for you to be able to do any kind of realignment for yourself and your business. Quite frankly, there are more of those cliche times of year, right? New Year's resolutions, a mid-year check-in. Those are usually the times that we go, which I don't know about you, but I can do a lot of damage in a 6-month period, right? I can gain a lot of weight. I can lose a lot of weight. I can save a lot of money. I can spend a lot of money. There are a lot of things that can happen if you go an extended period of time without checking in with yourself, with others, and your goals. And that's exactly what we want to focus on today from a financial perspective. So one of the main things that we had focused on during that mid-year alignment is having conversations around the activities that you are doing from a financial perspective. Right? If we remember at the root of it all that the whole purpose of us being in business is to fund our life by design. Somewhere along the way we get lost, almost as if, the job that we do is like one of those revolving doors that used to be in all of the department stores. And I don't know if, as a kid, if you've ever done this, or maybe you've seen a little kid do this, where they will get into the revolving door and they just push the revolving door over and over and over again, never actually wanting to leave the door. Well, that is exactly what happens to a lot of us when it comes to our businesses or our jobs, is we forget that this is a door to get you from one area to the next area. And quite often we get trapped in that revolving door in which the job becomes our life. The job becomes our personality. And we never leave that. Now, I'm not saying that building businesses isn't a wonderful hobby or game or whatever you want to put to it. And myself, as well as many others, study business and study what other people have done and the great players in the game of business. But again, reminder that the reason why we're doing it is because of funding whatever that life looks like. And so this is always a wonderful time to kind of check in with yourself and with your family and have conversations around what does that look like for you. And so from this is asking yourself the question, do you have a financial wealth strategy plan for you and your family? Many of us spend quite a bit of time doing our activities on our personal business plan. Right? We build this massive vision of what our business is going to be and how great it's going to be and how it's going to thrive. But often we actually don't go and take that same concept of building a business plan and putting it into our personal life. And so many of you have heard me talk about this before. I love this quote from Jay-Z. I actually love two quotes from Jay-Z. One is, I'm not a businessman, I'm a business man, right? And so the comma is between business and man. And it's really from that idea that I am a business. I provide products or services, and in exchange for those products or services, which might be my time, it might be my talents, it might be my skill sets, there is an exchange of monies, right, that happens in order to be able to supply that to whomever I am supplying it to. But so often, we don't treat ourselves like a business. We do not treat our home like a business. And so if I was to ask you the question, would you run a business without a budget? Would you run a business without having profit in mind? Would you run a business without knowing your expenses or paying your taxes? And it's the same question that I would ask you at home. Do you have a budget? Right now, a lot of people don't like the B word, almost as bad as they don't like the R word. In sense of budget and recession, which there's a lot of those words going on right now, but really understanding for yourself, what are we doing this for? You know, I make X amount of money and then X amount of money goes out. I have this, which was really one of the main motivations for me to go out into coaching on my own, was I had a lot of coaching clients from the organization that we were with that were making a lot of money. I mean, they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars. And yet they would come to me and at the end of the year go, but where did it all go? Or, you know, I'm making $600,000 a year, but I'm miserable. I have no work-life balance. I feel like I am beholden to all of my customers. I get up and I am obsessing over my business at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I am writing offers, and I am doing things until 11 o'clock at night, and I am like two ships in the wind with my spouse, and I don't really get to see my children. And so this is where, again, that revolving door conversation comes in, is are you getting stuck in the revolving door, or are you remembering that the door is the vehicle to get you from the outside to the inside, right? Or the inside to the outside, whatever you'd like it to be. So there are some questions that you can ask yourself, some things to think about when you start to form your own personal wealth strategic plan, right? Our family wealth strategic plan, whatever that is. Number one is, how much are we spending, right? And getting a real understanding about how much you're spending, right? I loved where people would go, oh, you know, my app has a wonderful thing with my bank and it shows me exactly what I've spent. Right, but that bank doesn't show you what you're spending over here on your credit card. Or, you know, the money that you make into this account is not showing in this account. So having a really firm understanding about what our expenses have been. And this is a wonderful time. You're able to look at the first half of the year, take that 6 months of data, because we can't just look at 1 month, right? We need at least 3 months or 3 pieces of data for us to be able to find a trend. So understanding how much in the first half of the year have you spent. And this is also where we can look at some of those other expected or unexpected expenses for the second half of the year. Do you spend a lot of money in the month of December for Hanukkah or Christmas or just the holidays in general? Do a lot of the people in your family have birthdays in the second half of the year? And so therefore, the things that you do to celebrate your loved ones are typically a little bit more expensive than what you spend on the first half of the year. From a business perspective, do you always put your client appreciation events or some of those expenses on the second half of the year, and you don't actually draw them out over a 12-month budget, and so therefore it hits you really hard in the month of September? Right? Looking at these things can give you a wonderful understanding around the activities that you're doing and how they have a direct correlation to your finances, right? So we have to know how much we're spending. We have to know how much is coming in. There's a quote that you've heard me say, right, that wealth is built in the gap between income and expenses. And so we have to understand how much income is coming in and how much are our basic expenses. From a basic expenses, this would be from a long period of time as humans, our thought and our survival mode has been food, water, shelter. Now, food, water, shelter kind of looks like the internet, and it kind of looks like our vehicle for transportation or whatever mode of transportation you use to get to work. If you work from home, what is it that you have to maintain in order to make sure that you can show up for your work, right? There's a lot of those expenses that are there, the utilities that we pay, the food that you eat. So taking in general, how much does it cost to operate your home? How much does it cost to feed you and your family, right? And to hydrate you and your family. I'm not talking about alcohol. And so now you have an understanding of what that amount is. Now we take that amount, right? And we see what our income is. Whatever that gap has been incidental expenses. That's the shopping spree at Home Goods. It is the going and getting new clothes. It's also the taking a trip or buying that bag that you've wanted or whatever it might be. The experiences, right? Part of that life by design, that life of intention. Some of those things, experiences, gifts, things that you want to do, but also understanding that there is a trade-off, right? When I say yes to something, I'm saying no to a whole lot of things. And so the question becomes, if I have a wealth strategic plan, how do I know that I am saying yes to something and that I'm saying no to something else? Do I know what I'm saying no to, and am I making a conscious decision from that point forward, right? When we don't have monies already pre-allocated, what we end up doing is we spend it because we think we have extra. It's the same thing that happens with our time. And I was having this discussion during that mid-year alignment. Quite often when I first start coaching or talking with people, and I ask them what their calendar looks like, the parts that they will put on their calendar are usually the activities that involve someone else. This is, I have a home inspection, or this is, I have a consult with a potential client this afternoon, or it's, I have Orange Theory at 8:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So often the things that are put on their calendar are the things that involve another person, or it would be something that if they don't show up to, or if they're late to, that they would potentially have embarrassment and or shame, right? And so what ends up happening is that when you look at a calendar that is only external facing, then what that also means is that the things that are important to you, the things that are important and that you are the only person to know that they are a priority, when they're not on your calendar, they're the easiest things for you to dismiss. This is why it's so easy for us to always show up for others versus how we show up for ourselves. It's because we have already been trained and we've been programmed that we're going to show up for, I have to be to this job at this time, or I have to be to church at this time, or I told them that I would pick them up at this time. But you told you that you wanted to build wealth. You told you that you wanted to build a business. You told you that you wanted to get into shape. And yet those things are not necessarily translating onto your calendar. And so understanding that when we have a time blocking of our day, that is a budget for our time, the same way that we're talking about establishing a budget for your money. Now, another element about your family wealth strategic plan is to understand where is it that you want to go. Now, that end destination might change a little bit, and quite frankly, it is not something etched in stone. I want you to change. If priorities are different, if life circumstances are different, certain things happen that bring you to a new area or change that idea, the fact that you still have a destination in mind means that you have those monies pre-allocated. So if for you, part of that is financial security, more often we find that there are two main motivators when it comes to money, depending on where you are in your particular portion of life. For a lot of people, it could be financial security. Either you don't have financial security or you hadn't had financial security growing up, and so then therefore it's very important to you that you establish that you never go back to that place, right? Again, we talked a little bit about this for those of you that were with me in the mid-year alignment, is that there's a fascinating observation that I have had, especially with people that do not come from wealth. They don't necessarily come from even middle class, or what we would consider secured middle class. There's a lot of an area where if you came from either a poor environment or you came from an environment that was not necessarily very secure with money, right? We lived paycheck to paycheck, or there was a lot of times where we were, moving certain monies to make sure that everything happens, right? Rob Peter to pay Paul, right? That colloquialism. And so understanding that from that place is we've been so used to survival mode, being from panic, how am I going to pay these bills? How am I going to put food on the table? To, oh, thank God that that's over. Oh my goodness, I go back into chaos. How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to feed my family? And then that's done. And so what ends up happening, and we've heard people use that language of thriving in chaos, is that there's a programming oftentimes for people that are used to that financial environment, that they constantly will put themselves in an area of scarcity, and they use that scarcity to be the fire under their butts, right? The motivator for them to go and make more money. So they go out and they work really hard, they make money, and then they feel the need to relax because they have just been struggling that whole time. They created an environment where they were struggling, and then they converted over to feeling that. So it's a survival chaos, which never really allows that individual to move into a thriving element when it comes to building wealth. Because again, it's a part of the programming, it's part of the upbringing, and there's already this idea of, I hustled really hard to get out of that chaos place. I'm just going to rest a little bit while I'm in this survival mode. And so it's very interesting to understand, do you want to continue to live like that? Do you want to live in a place where you're focused on just getting over financial security, right? And so that's one bucket typically that is a motivator. A second motivator is financial independence, financial freedom. This is getting to the place where I don't have to work, or no longer do I have to clock in, clock out in order to make sure that I can pay my bills. And this is usually done through making sure that there's passive income, which that's a different story for a different day about the definition of passive. But essentially, I am making money whether or not I clock in and clock out today. For a lot of you that are solopreneurs or people that are independent contractors, if you don't show up, if you don't do the work, you don't get paid, right? And so that is a job. We call it a business. In the eyes of the government, you've established your LLC, or you've established your S Corp or your C Corp. And so yes, in the eyes of the government, you are a company. You are a business. But if you, the individual, stopped working, or if you, the individual, went on vacation, if you stopped making money, that is not a business in the sense of a self-sustaining organism. You are working a job. Right? And so that's a different story, again, for a different day. This is really just talking about building your wealth. So understanding, do you want to continue to build your business around you? And if you show up, then you make money. If you don't show up, you don't. Do you want to take your money and put it in assets, whether that is real estate, or that is in equities in terms of stocks and bonds, or if that is in other businesses, or if it's in ATMs, or whatever it is that you want your additional money to come from? It's, do you want to make sure that that is built up into a certain place to where that is then supplementing your income, right? So having a firm understanding of where your money to be, where you want to be financially, also from the place of retirement, right? There's a lot of people that I talk to that go, oh, I'm never going to retire. I love to work. And there probably is some truth to that, but I also think that that is language that they've told themselves because they already feel so far behind on the retirement timeline that they think that retirement is just not possible for them, and so therefore they need to, kind of reword how they are going to be working out for the rest of their life, right? And this is called a spin politically, right? So they're spinning the narrative that isn't that they're not retiring because they can't. They're not retiring because they don't want to. And I think that there is probably some truth to that. I know that for myself, I probably will always want to work with my hands. I will always want to write. I will always want to talk. and help others. And so that is going to be something when we say never retiring, that is probably going to be the same thing for me. But in terms of if I don't make X amount of money, then this whole gig stops. Well, that's a very different place to be emotionally. This also has to do with legacy. So when something happens to you, what is the plan for your spouse, partner, significant other? What is the plan for your children, right? And so part of our family wealth strategic plan is, do we have adequate life insurance? Do we have adequate health insurance? Do we have our burial arrangements already figured out, or cremation, or whatever it is that you're going to be doing? Do I have a plan on what happens to my assets? Do I have a plan of what happens to my businesses, right? I think that I have a ton of time, but as Doug reminded me just last week, he actually has no idea of what's to happen to my businesses if something was to happen to me unexpectedly. We already have everything arranged in terms of personal assets, but what about the business assets that are in my name or that are in the names of other businesses, right? Do we have a financial strategic plan? So revisiting this, it's always a wonderful place to be at the first kind of half as it is over, is to look at yourself and have the question, maybe the first half of the year you got a little lazy. Maybe the first half of the year you put blinders on and you kind of were doing certain things. So taking some time now and going, with the choices that we made, fantastic, good, bad, or indifferent, right? This is not a place to shame ourselves of, oh man, we should have saved more, or we should have projected more, or we shouldn't have bought that stupid thing, right? I'm not asking for you to do that. What I'm asking for you to do is take an audit, right? A self-assessment of yourself at this moment in the year, going, what have we done with our monies? What would we like to do with our monies, right? Again, there is a lot of conversation around possible recession. We're hearing a lot of those words. And so this is that path between fear and greed. Quite frankly, a lot of the economy that has been the last 2 years post-COVID has actually been motivated very largely by fear and by greed, right? We've seen a lot of fear in terms of the toilet paper shortage, right? My fear that I'm going to run out, so I'm going to gobble everything up. Well, is that fear or is that greed? Well, that would be a question. As companies realizing that they can take advantage of others that need their products or services, and so not just taking an adequate take of profit from supply and demand, they are gouging prices because they know that they can, and that as an industry they're not being regulated. That would be greed. It would be the same question for yourself when you're looking about certain things from an investment perspective, right? If we look back at Dow Jones, just as an example, pre-2008, right? The last big recession that happened, we had the crash of 2008. Dow Jones, right, was worth 14,100 and something dollars, right? Someone I'm sure can quote me and put it in there. But roughly around $14,000. As things started to go red, right, and people started to freak out, many people sold. They sold out of the Dow Jones. They sold everything. They just didn't want to take any more losses. The Dow Jones, as of this morning, even after the first half of this year being one of the worst first halves of the year of stock market since 1970, Dow Jones is worth $31,000 a share. So for the individual who sold at 14,000 or 12,000 or whatever they sold in 2008, that then found themselves reinvesting in the Dow Jones in, say, 2012 or 2013, and they're thinking about selling again today, right? That same person would have made a significant amount of money if they continued to purchase at that what is a clearance or in the red element, right? So there's so much more to wealth building. There's so much more to personal finance. There's so much more to what you do with your monies. And we're definitely working on providing a course for you that's going to have an in-depth conversation about this. Many hours on taking a deep dive into these different areas of where you can put your money. But I do want to just leave you with that idea that wealth is built in the gap between income and expenses. If there's nothing else that you do for this next week, but just get a really good assessment of what has been your income and what has been your expenses, and then making a conscious decision about what you would like your money to do in the second half of the year. Do you want to put money in savings? Do you want to invest any of that money? Do you want to save money for vacation? Do you want to save money for Christmas? Whatever it might be, it is making a conscious decision. And so I know that when this money comes in the month of July, that I'm thinking about what is happening in December, or I'm thinking about that investment purchase next March, or I'm thinking about my retirement 10 years from now, right? So often we get caught in the revolving door of the department store that we forget that the job isn't the reason. The job is the vehicle. The job is the door to the opportunity. The money and the business is the door for the opportunity of the things that we are focused on. So would love to hear from you. Put comments in the comment section. I know that for many of you, we're probably a little hungover from the 4th of July, and that's quite all right. For many of you, we have quite a few things going on to play catch up from a long holiday. But please come back, watch the video, put your comments in the comment section. I know that myself and Shantae would love to be able to respond to you. And also, we really want to hear from you about what your goals are. What are some of the topics that you want to focus on? So please feel free to put that in the comment section as well. Or, as I said, you're more than welcome to send us a direct message, or you can even email us at team@michaelreedy.org. That goes directly to Shantae. Shantae will look at everything for you and get back to me so that we can build a program around what exactly you would like to talk about. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next Tuesday.